Okay, so what I'd like to demonstrate now is the saccadometer. The saccadometer is a device that measures saccades. And I know that we also look at saccades on the VNG, but this measures different qualities of saccades. So Donna is going to just hold this up. Basically, it's a band that we put around the patient's head, and there are little lasers on each side that will project lasers on the wall that the patient will look at, and there's also a camera in there that will measure the patient's eye movements. So Donna's going to put this on our patient's head here so you can see how this goes on. Again, it's just a comfortable band that lays over the patient's head, and it goes right over their nose. There you go, just like so. So this is how the saccadometer works. If you look and see, it's right on her head, and there's a laser emitter that's emitting laser onto the wall, from left to right, and what the patient does is the patient is looking at these saccades without moving their head as quickly as she can, and the unit is measuring the saccade. It's measuring the saccadic speed, it's measuring the latency, which is how long it takes her to take off once the new laser is submitted to her, and it's also taking a look at the accuracy. Is she landing right on the target? So let's look at what a saccadometer graph looks like. Okay, now that you've seen a demonstration of how the saccadometer testing is performed, on this section of the video I'd like to go over the results and how to read some of the graphs and results of the saccadometer. So when you come back in for your report of findings, it'll make more sense to you. Let's review a couple things here. Saccadometry is an essential test to analyze areas of the brain dysfunction in patients with various types of neurological disorders. Again, concussion, minor traumatic brain injury. There's been research on measuring saccades in these, and it's very important in determining areas of the brain that are affected. Dizziness and vertigo. We definitely run a saccadometer on patients with those issues. Balance disorders. Patients with neurodegenerative disorders, which includes things like Alzheimer's and dementia and Parkinson's disease. We can see disorders or aberrancies in saccades. Neurodevelopmental disorders such as autism and such as ADHD and learning disabilities and reading disorders in kids or adults. We would want to run a saccadometer on migraine headaches and patients with chronic pain and patients who have had a stroke. We want to look at areas of the brain that has been affected. Saccades are the most researched eye movements in neurology, so it's very, very important. We want to look at that. Eye movements are the only human physiological function that involves every part of the brain, and especially saccades or fast eye movements. That's why we want to look at them. That's why we're so interested in them as functional neurologists. When we do saccadometry, we're going to measure latency, which is the reaction time to how long it takes for the eye to take off in a fast eye movement. Velocity is how fast it goes. Okay. Accuracy is, does it land on the target that the person is trying to look at, and the waveform is sort of the way that the saccade fires and its quality of its movement. So we'll go over this in more detail. So let's start with this. I want you to understand that saccadometry is researched. This paper was a paper, it's Saccadometry, the possible application of latency distribution measurement for monitoring concussion. This was research done on boxers with and without concussion, measuring their latency or reaction time, and what they found is that patients with concussions have a increased latency or a slower reaction time when they do fast eye movements. And so it's a very good way of determining if somebody has a concussion or still concussion-like issue going on. It's even more specific than some of the neurocognitive testing. So it's very important, and so this paper is a great paper in that this is one of the reasons why we use it in our office, especially for our concussion cases. This is what a printout would look at like from a saccadometer. And so it measures saccadic eye movements or fast eye movements going to the left and to the right. The red ones are going to the left. The green ones are going to the right. So they're fast eye movements right or left. When you move your eyes to the right in a saccade, that is generated by the left side of your brain. When you move your eyes to the left, which is the red ones, that is generated by the right brain. So these are leftward eye movements, right brain, rightward eye movements, which are left brain. It has been studied that saccadic reaction time, or saccade or fast eye movement reaction time, should have a latency of less than 200 milliseconds. So if you're looking at one dot on the wall and the other dot appears, it should take you less than 200 milliseconds for your eyes to take off to that other target. If it's longer than 200 milliseconds, we consider those saccades pathological. We see these in concussion cases. We see these in people who have neurodegenerative disorders such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. People that have had minor traumatic brain injury. In fact, we can look at a saccadometer and measure a person's latencies and determine whether they are going to be prone to having a neurodegenerative disorder later in life. If you have latencies over 200 milliseconds, you will be prone to those neurodegenerative disorders, or it may be signs of a head injury. So anything here, this number here is 50 to 99, 100 to 149, 150 to 199 milliseconds. So anything here and over are good. In this case, this person has some delay in their saccadic reaction time, 200 to 249, and this is the green or the rightward, which would be most likely generated by the left brain. Again, we have to use other things. We have to use our video nystagmography. We need to use our bedside exam, and we have to compare all these. So this is the chart that you get, one of the charts. This is another way of looking at that chart. So this is the time, or the milliseconds, and this number right here is 200. So any of these saccades from here over are good. Any of these saccades from here over are bad. So any of these are between 200 and 220. These are too slow, and the majority of them are in the green. There is one saccade, one eye movement that was up in the 260s to 300s, and this is where they are in position. This is another type of printout that we get with saccades, and when a saccade takes off, you're looking from one target all the way to the other target. So the target is here, and it's usually around 20 degrees. So when you're looking from left to right or right to left, the saccade has to take off to a certain speed, and it has to land at a target. So there's sort of an acceleration and deceleration. So what we like to see is we like to see the green ones and the red ones at very much the same speed, and we want them to see a nice smooth arc like this. And we call this sort of a ponytail, meaning they're all tight together. These little guys are outliers. This one came in way too slow. This one came in way too slow, but they're all landing around the same spot. So that is our phase profile. This is our velocity profile. This is telling us how fast the saccade goes. You can see that the red ones and green ones are right on top of each other. There's a couple little stragglers here, which we don't like to see. But for the most part, this is a fairly good velocity and speed. In the waveform, it should look like a nice triangle here. And this side, this is the acceleration of the saccade from when you're looking from right to left or left to right. That's how fast it goes. But if it has to land on a target, it's going to have to decelerate or slow down. And so this is the slowing, this is the speeding up of the saccade, and this is the slowing down of the saccade to hit the target. This is a position. So this is looking at time, where the saccade is at a certain time in a position, and they should all really be right on top of each other. We shouldn't see a bunch of these little stragglers. This is telling us that these saccades are undershooting the target, and they're not very accurate. So here's an example of somebody with a latency distribution that's not very good. So all of this person's saccades should be from here and this way. So from here and this way are good ones, but you can see these are from 200 to 249, which are too slow, 250 to 299, 300 to 349. He even has some saccades that are 400 to 449. This is a patient that had a head injury, and you can see that their saccades are too slow, and really it's both sides of the brain, maybe a little bit more of rightward saccades, which is left brain. This is an example of a very healthy looking latency 'profile. You can see that the reds and the greens are all under 200. There's maybe one or two that are over 200 to 399, but the majority of them, over 95 to 99% of the 100 saccades that this person did, are really perfect. They're under 199. That's what we'd like to see in a healthy brain. Again, this is one of injury, one that has latent saccades. This is what this would look like on the profile that shows this is the milliseconds and this is position. So we've got very nice tight. They're all together. The reds and the greens are all bunched together, which we want, and they're all under 200, with the exception of this one outlier, which was really an incorrect saccade. But for the most part, all of these are under 200. That's a healthy brain, healthy frontal lobe function, healthy brainstem function. This is somebody that's just sort of all over the place. Everything should be from here over, and you can see that this patient has red and greens. They're all spread out. They're not tight together. They're all spread all over, and they go from anywhere from 50, which are really good fast reaction time, all the way to very slow 500 millisecond reaction time. That is not a good sign for this person's brain. This is a person with a neurodegenerative disorder. This is our velocity profile, and our position profile, which measures velocity and position. It's what we call our phase profile. And what we should see here, this is a pretty good looking graph. The reds and the greens are right together. They're very tight together, other than these couple of these outliers. Here's an example of an unhealthy brain. We call this, for lack of a better word, spaghetti. You can see that there's no consistency. Some of these saccades are coming out at a speed of 200, 100 degrees per second. A couple of them are coming up at 600 degrees per second. There is no consistency. The red and the green, and there's no tightness to this. This is a person that has problems, most likely in the brainstem, which is a big area that's affected by concussion. And this is a person that has very poor saccadic velocity. Here's another example of this kind of profile. This is a little bit better in that they're tighter together, and the reds and the greens are kind of together. They're all very fast. But you see with the reds, you see how fast they go, and then they go slow again, and then they go fast again, and they go slow again. We call these biphasic, two phases, and these types of saccades, or fast eye movements, have a problem. They start off very quickly, very fast, and then they slow down mid-flight, and then they go fast again, and then they slow down again. And that's because an area of their brain, most likely the mesencephalon, the area damaged in concussion, it may not be functioning very well, or may be functioning too fast. And what it could be doing is affecting these types of neurons that shut down the saccade in the mid-flight. That tells us what areas of the brain may be affected in either a neurodegenerative disorder, such as Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, or in a head injury or a patient with a balance disorder. Here's a more healthier looking type of thing. They're very nice arcs, but you can see that the red ones, which are leftward saccades, which are generated by right brain and generated by left brainstem, are nowhere near as good as the ones on the green ones, which are going to the right side, which are left brain. You can see that these are slower and not as fast. Again, here's another example of very healthy rightward distribution, which would be left brain and right side of the brainstem. And you can see that these are slower and biphasic. These are the ones going to the left. And this could be a problem in the right upper brainstem. And these are the things that we need to diagnose to help a person with a neurological disorder. This is a nice velocity profile. It should be like a triangle. So that's the way it should look. Here's an example of somebody with very fast velocity here, and it comes back down and it's all skewed, especially in the leftward saccades. So we don't like to see that. This is our position profile. You should see that this is time. This is where the saccade is at any moment in time, and this is the position where it's at. So we can look and see. They should all be very close. So at 12 degrees, they should be, the time and position should be the same for each right and leftward saccade. You can see that they're all ending at around 20 degrees, which is where they should be. Here's somebody with a lot of deficiencies in accuracy of their saccades. You can see that this person here, this green one, ends at 2 degrees. This one ends at 3 degrees. This one ends at 4 degrees. So the saccade never made it that far. This is what we call dysmetric saccades. Here is one that's even way more dysmetric. The green ones are dysmetric, which are, again, to the right. The red ones are dysmetric to the left. This one is not looking good. Again, they should look like that. So this is healthy. This is unhealthy. So I hope this makes a little bit more sense. I know it's very complicated, and I don't expect you to be a expert in saccade and saccadometry readings, but I think when you come back for your report of findings, or if you're planning to come into our office, you can see the precision that we look at brain function. And when we go over your results, I think it'll make things make a little bit more sense to you in understanding the saccadometer test.